We'll go ahead and begin today's webinar, Harnessing AI and Analytics for Communication. I'd like to kick things off with introducing today's speakers. Joining myself, I'm Tina Davis, Director of Marketing for Numonix. I'm also joined by Evan Kahan, our Chief Product Officer and co-founder. I'm proud to be joined by him. He's an innovator at our organization and in his prior ventures in capture technologies, and he's engaged with our community, overseeing technology and product development for our solutions, including all of our omni-channel interaction, recording of voice, video, chat, screen sharing platforms, and excited to have him here with us today. In addition, we are proudly joined by Tom Abernathy, co-founder of EmpoweringCloud. Definitely need to check them out and hear more about them if you have not yet. He is a solutions director at Pure IP, as well as how many years now, Tom? Microsoft MVP? Quite a few?
Yeah, I think 11.
Just a couple.
Quite a while.
And a Microsoft certified master. So really an honor to have him join us, as he is really proactive in staying up to date with industry news and developments, putting out quite a bit of content and information across the community. And he is definitely an advocate through his Tom Talks blog, UC Today contributor, his Microsoft podcast, as well as his email engagement. So obviously highly engaged in the Microsoft community, both in person and online. Quite a few events coming up that you'll see Tom about. So really excited.
I like to get around.
Really excited and honored to have some of your time to have you join us here today and help educate the community. So with that, I'm going to let the powerhouse speakers kind of dig in. I'll give you a brief summary and then of what to expect, and then I'm going to hand things over. So today we are going to, did not advance my screen here. So those are our speakers. You can see their lovely faces now, but in addition, in terms of what to expect today, we'll guide you through how AI is contributing to better communication. And that's both a broad and very general statement. So to clarify, what we want to provide you with and have you walk away with today is some real world examples when it comes to Microsoft Teams and how to use AI features and what that landscape looks like. So what is AI doing today for communication? What is the future and what is that outlook? We'll share some firsthand observations in terms of what our customers and what the community is doing around selecting the right expertise and finding the right innovative and AI powered features. We'll also dig a little bit deep into Teams in terms of what data insights are available today, how organizations are using that, what features there are for enhanced communications within Teams, and adding AI to that roadmap, and then what some of those blockers might be to really getting an enhanced AI experience to leverage those features for better communication and analytics. And then we'll dig into some real world use cases around what AI is available today, what analytics, what companies are doing, and what our overall observations are, and in terms of real world activations with leveraging that. So with that, I will go ahead and hand things over to Evan for our next slide around what the landscape looks like today.
Thank you, Tina. Thanks everyone for joining. Welcome to this session. So to kick off, what we want to do is kind of go through AI in a little bit more of fashion on how it affects companies and corporations, taking a step away, I guess, from what we've all been talking about recently, which are AI assistants, generative AI, and talk more about the other areas that AI is starting to impact and how communication platforms really, serve this new growth in the AI market. And the first thing which we always talk about is, the better AI models, the more data you feed into them, the more points they have to assess. And that's where we come into the picture. There is just so much information that's buried within all of the audio, the video, and the chat communications that happen every single day, that really can help companies achieve much bigger and greater things, become more efficient, improve margins, and really give a better experience, not just to their customers, but to their employees as well. There are different processes that they might have internally and externally within their company. So, getting your fuel, which in our case is that media recordings, getting as much of it as you can in a compliant way. So isolated to your company, to your environments, to your geographic locations, and securing that data. And if you put all of that together, you can start now working on a lot of cool features, a lot of cool products that you're not able to if you're just using big platforms which are processing everyone's data together, right? So a lot of cloud-based solutions that are absorbing a lot of this data in ways that don't allow companies to really single it out and use it for their benefit only. And what we'll do in this session today is go a little bit deeper into what each of those mean, and how getting these right at the top can really put you in a strong place, whether you're a company that's building AI product, or whether you're a medium or large enterprise that has already kicked off your own AI program, your own AI departments. You're already leveraging AI in other pieces of the organization, and you want to plug in now everything to do with communication and leverage that to kind of grow out your product or grow out your processes internal.
Thank you for that, Evan. And so as we think about all of these points, I think it's a great segue to talk about some of our observations across communication platforms and what the right AI technologies look like. You had alluded to the larger AI providers that specialize in specific verticals. And then you also talked about some of the enterprises that are beginning their journey and trying to research and leverage technology strategically. So can you both contribute a little bit to the conversation in terms of what your observations have been within organizations in terms of where there might be some bumps in the road, or where they might be seeing some success, and how they're getting to those successes?
Yeah, I mean, I could jump in there if you like. It's really interesting. Obviously, AI has captured everybody's imagination. The power is kind of evident, and ChatGPT really brought that to the fore. So everybody is like, "Oh, this is like magic! Like I can ask questions and it gives coherent answers." In enterprise, obviously, there's kind of an excitement and a cautiousness at the same time, because they know it's going to be impactful. They know they could save money, improve processes, better experience, but they're also worried about data and data security. So it's kind of that balancing act of getting it right. What is interesting, I think, is even verticals that you wouldn't naturally think of as being experimental and super into AI, so legal, FinServe, pharma, like they very much are, because they know that if they're the organization who doesn't get on this bandwagon and their competitors do, they're going to be in trouble. So there's kind of this paradox going on of, we want to be first and in the mix and competitive, and we're slightly worried about data and security and compliance.
Yeah, and I would agree. I would add to that there's as I said up top, there's really this rollout of generative AI when it comes to ChatGPT, and this whole concept of assistants and agents helping individual users with whatever they're doing on a day-to-day. And that's where everyone's been excited now. And now it's really time to kind of productize that into a feature set that's more than just an assistant for a certain thing, right? We don't want to get to a world where You have an assistant for everything, just like you have an app for everything on your phone, right? We don't want to have 50 assistants running around connected to everything that we're doing. We're trying to get better use cases into the market for leveraging this AI, because again, as we alluded to up front, it's really the AI becomes better with what you feed it. And so the goal is really at the ground level is to get the best data that you can possibly get for your company, and get it into the correct AI solutions and models that that are geared towards your specific industry. I think the main point for me for this conversation is that there's no such thing that we've seen, I think Tom would agree, where someone comes out with an AI product and says, hey, we can make this work for everyone, right? We can make this work for every vertical. I think when anyone comes and says that that's what they do, our ears start to ring a little bit, because we've seen that it requires a huge amount of focus in the areas which you're trying to solve. And if you don't have, let's say, your team or company focused in on that specific thing, then you very quickly go too wide. You try to cover too much in AI, and then you start to lose the implied value of what AI can bring.
Yeah, I think that's a really or two really important points you made there. So the first one is like a lot of the AI solutions, like Microsoft Copilot being kind of the prime example, are like, this is your personal assistant to do things for you, and that's one level of impact. And definitely there's some real time-saving potential. There's some real good value there. Even simpler than Copilot, you've got things like AI spell and grammar checking. Like that thing is real today. But when you're into, like you talked about, the data is fuel, like everybody's been collecting this data for a while, but not being able to, unless you're the biggest of biggest enterprises and you have a data science team that can dive into this, most people couldn't really leverage the value. But you can't take, we've seen this with ChatGPT, there's diminishing returns with the amount of kind of width of data you want to get involved. So if you're in legal, there are very specific terms that mean very specific things. You want to have a model that understands or has contextual understanding of your terminology, your approach, various practices, laws, document types, all that kind of thing. So yeah, I don't think one AI tool is coming to take over. It's more building models or specialist organizations, specialist partners saying, we're just going to focus on legal and we're going to nail that scenario. So how do you get your data and build a custom model with them potentially?
Yeah, and I agree 100%, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that the companies that are succeeding in providing, benefits of using AI are the ones who have chosen a specific vertical and have isolated into everything that comes with that specific vertical, whether it's sales or HR or finance. Actually, finance is being broken up into different sub-verticals as well, right? So, so we're seeing that the ones who are succeeding in this space are the ones that are actually focused in on a very, specific area, rather than some companies that I think are trying to build a one and done or one size fits all. And we just see, when it comes to either onboarding, deployments, getting things going, it's not, you can't, a rollout would end up taking, longer than what we took to roll out Link 2010 back in the days.
And certainly, I think that speaks to the point that, regardless of where you're at, you need a team that's working together, both your IT teams, your functional groups for the specific purposes of those analytics. And really, if you haven't already, begin thinking about the AI strategy and how you're implementing that into the communication plan, as we've seen organizations across the board in varying stages. And so I think with that, we can back up a little bit to what Tom was saying about Microsoft's team specifically, and start digging into some of the key functionality. Tom, you had alluded and actually not alluded, but you were a bit direct in saying, there are user-focused features and then there are organizational focused features. Can we start digging into some of those capabilities and observations around that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Microsoft have really, certainly in the team space, obviously, have captured the whole industry's imagination with taking what OpenAI is doing, building their own models, and bringing in like customer data in Microsoft 365 tenants. So a lot of what they're promoting at the moment is around that per user help. This will be a summary of the meeting for you. You can ask midway through the meeting what's been said so far. That's the kind of first level, and it's a very sensible level for Microsoft because they're offering value to the individual. What they're not doing is then going into where you start to get into things like contact center or specific vertical solutions where they're looking over data sets. So all of the sales calls, all of the HR calls, all of the pre-sales meetings, whatever it wants to be. And so Microsoft, what they're doing with Copilot is really exciting, but it's not going to solve some of the business challenges of like, what's the top 3 challenges my pre-sales team are being asked about across customers over the last month? Or, we're an HR team, how many complaints have been put into the system, and what's the summary of the types of complaints that are being put in? So that's where there's a whole powerhouse of not just Microsoft. There are other teams building different AI models, so it might not just be Microsoft, but there are whole sets of teams working on, as Evan said, they're focused on sub verticals, and some of the things you see on the screen there are some of the areas they're targeting. So is it sentiment? Is it keyword extraction? Is it improving transcription? Because guess what, general transcription engine in a legal environment, challenging, because again, all that very specific terminology might be a challenge. But I guess in summary, that's where I think the bigger potential is to unlock the power. Like everybody's going to love the personal tools, that's cool, but imagine for the first time being able to look across these huge data sets of all your meetings and finding out what the common themes are, what the common challenges are. It's really exciting.
Absolutely, Tom. And you bring up some really great points there in terms of, what AI engines are doing today. And I know firsthand, Evan, we have conversations behind the scenes, et cetera, and talking through solving for some of our clients' pain points, what those barriers look like for crossing over into an AI strategy, and specifically around Microsoft Teams. Evan, do you want to share anything else contextually around that might be beneficial for our audience today?
Yeah, I think that from servicing the larger companies, the companies that are building AI products out there, what we're trying to do is kind of be that point where you have all of your company operating on Teams, right? That's what we're all about these days. It might be your call center, it might be your back office, it could be really any use case for voice, for chat, even just for video on its own. And being able to take that data set in a secure and compliant way, and then deal with all of the kind of worries, the pain points that the first questions that you'll get when everyone is starting this strategy, right, is, okay, how do we capture this data in a way that it belongs to us, we own it, we control it, we store it, it's all on us, and from there we can open ourselves up to kind of using it for our own purposes, right? And then going back to what Tom said around, well, if you're using the personal assistants and things like that, that's bringing in information from other places, from over the internet, from etc. Whereas when you're trying to keep that all in-house, and you're going to feed your model, for example, with all of your audio and video data, it could have things like customer information in there, PII, GDPR comes into play, MiFID II comes into play a lot in Europe and things like that. And the strategy has to start by securely obtaining as much data as you possibly can. And I think that that for me is kind of like the primary thing that we always talk about, right? It's like without the data, without feeding the engine, you have nothing. And that's why the companies that are out there that are able to grab that media in a compliant way and then cover that first barrier to really having a full-blown AI toolkit in your organization is I think one of the biggest things that we talk about when it comes to, hey, we're at the beginning of our journey here, we're looking at a strategy, and how do we kick off with the very first thing, which is how do we securely get the best, richest data out of Teams in a way that can be delivered to any AI engine or model in the world.
So Evan, talk us through, like we've been talking about offline and chemistry, like where's Numonix play in that? So I've got my Teams meetings. Obviously, people know Numonix for compliance recording. I'm a big enterprise. I have an in-house team building a model for us because we're EY or SAP or somebody massive.
Right.
Like we can invest in that. What's Numonix doing for that team? How's it work?
So as you mentioned, we've had EmpoweringCloud, which is our compliance recording product. It gives you the ability to, add compliance policies to your team's environments, record your calls, and have an interface to play them back, to apply compliance tools and features to them, etc. And what we've noticed is that there's a lot of partners and bigger, medium and enterprise size customers who, like we said up top, they've already built out a portal, a dashboard, an entire subset of a product where they're already looking at or trying to deal with their own data. And so they're coming to partners like us, or the compliance recording program, right? And they're saying, okay, what we're really, really interested in is the compliant media capture. And the rest of what you do for your other set of customers is something that we deal with on our own, right? So we've already built that out. We might already have a team of 10, 20, data scientists and all of that kind of stuff. And so what they're really in the back of their minds thinking about is, how can I easily and quickly almost plug and play a bot into my own enterprise that is sitting there in my geographic region, only recording the calls that I give it to record in my organization, with as many rules as you would like to add. So I only want to record inbound calls for this sales department, or I only want to record meetings if certain criteria are hit. They're labeled the color red and their subject has a specific word, whatever it might be, right? And so that's when we kind of started to think, there's a gap in the market here for, as we've been kind of referring to as middleware, but we kind of refer to it as Teams Recording as a Service, TRaaS. And what that does is it can be deployed either completely within a customer's Azure environment, or we do it as a managed service. And what we've done is given these big companies kind of like what we personally feel is an onboarding to a small product, right? You have a couple clicks and all of a sudden you can assign a policy to someone and you're off and running. And I always compare that to the difficulty that these same customers had in the Skype for Business days, right? They wanted to go out and they wanted to go and capture in the early days of transcription. They wanted to go and capture 1,000 users' calls, right? So for them, that was, okay, we need 20 servers and 6 months deployment time, and we need to consult with the security team and this team and that team, and it was a massive deal. Now, to be able to go back to those same group of guys and say, you remember that project we did for you 5 years ago and it took 6 months to roll out with all of your teams? We can do that for you in 20 minutes. It literally blows their mind, right? Because
and I guess most importantly, you're already committed to that space. So that like
exactly.
Again, in theory, these companies could roll their own recording bot, but they're not going to get through the certification progress. They're not going to keep up with Microsoft's, almost daily, it feels, API changes. And I think it's interesting that you guys are positioning this in two ways. So one is the enterprise use case, but also you're doing middleware for other ISVs that are doing clever things, that maybe they're multi-platform, so maybe they want to capture calls traditionally and Zoom and whatever. You can be part of that story again, with the customer knowing it's a certified bot, not just someone that's rolled their own.
Right, exactly. And that's a great point, which is the compliance recording program has really come a long way over the last few years to kind of separate out the partners that are committed to improving this SDK and these APIs for media, and and others who are just maybe playing around with what does it mean to have a bot, etc. And it is one of those things where none of the, at least from our conversations with our customers, none of those customers want to go through the process of certifying that bot or dealing with the program on a weekly basis, right? It's just we've built a company out of it. It's a there's a lot of work to do, right? There's a lot of things that go backwards and forwards, and Microsoft is a massive platform. So when anything rolls out, where there's a lot of checks and balances that happen, and so that's one of the things that we do, right? We make sure that you just worry about your AI and how you're building it out, and don't get bogged down in keeping a compliant bot, which means now the program requires you to have an M365 security cert. So it's not just about certifying that your bot records calls anymore. You have an entire layer of security approvals that have to happen now as well for you to get that stamp, which up until last year, the year before, let's say Teams, that was never a thing. All certifications for Microsoft voice recording in the past from OCS through were all just, hey, does your product record? And it's gone way beyond that.
Yeah,
and
we've
we're
seen that
happy
in the
to
other
see that
certification programs as well. Microsoft,
in
because
contact
it's being seen as part of the customer's solution, rightly so. Microsoft are upping the bar every time with the certified solutions, which is good.
Yeah, exactly.
One more thing I want to touch on as well is interesting is obviously solutions could potentially, if you enable transcription, they could grab the transcripts, but the difference here is you can grab the audio and the video, even the sharing. So like depending on what you want to do with the AI, that top left box of sentiment analysis, there's a huge difference between text analysis and potentially analyzing tone and pauses and frustration and all the clever things you can potentially do with sentiment. So when you're thinking about your solution, is text enough? Are you looking for transcript level, or are you trying to look for some more insight as well?
For me, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Evan. Sorry.
Yeah. So for us, when it comes to our IX Cloud and compliance solution, it's about using, I would say, our partnership with Cognitive Service is very strong. So those kind of models where we feed our own recordings into the platform, we are leveraging all of those kind of cool features that you get out of Cognitive Service. But from a TRAS perspective, customers have are also using Cognitive. Some of them have even built their own transcription engines that are isolated to their industry.
Yeah.
And then sentiment, again, we've seen a number of different vendors being used across the board for sentiment. Personally, our findings is that the transcription companies that were built 10 plus years ago have seen so much change that it's become a difficult place for them to be as we move to remote work, at home work, and a lot of these meetings, right? A lot of the transcription technology was built on a clear call center scenario with 2 channels, with the caller in one, the callee in another, and you're good to go. Now, well, today I was in a meeting this morning with 20 people, right? And so as soon as I give that meeting to an older transcription model, it can't deal with the fact that there was 20 people in one channel, right? And so as even just the last few years, this has opened up a new kind of processing, right, when it comes to getting this information out of the audio. And my personal experience is that Cognitive has done the best job, meaning out of the box, the accuracy rate across the 70 plus languages that are supported now, the out of the box accuracy rate is higher than anything else that we've ever tested. And so for that reason alone, we stick with them as our default out of the box, just simply because the accuracy rate is that high. Now, are there other engines that have been tuned to be out of the box more accurate? Yes, but those are super specialized. And obviously, as you know, Cognitive gives you the ability to fine tune, whatever you would like as well. And so we do see a lot of, in this case, the enterprise Microsoft customers, they've already implemented this, right? They're just looking to get more media into their system, but they've already implemented those Cognitive Service features on the little bit that they've managed to upload so far.
Interesting.
So you guys are thundering along. I'm going to help keep pace a bit here and circle back a bit to, what it looks like and what our customers and those who are participating today are beginning to think about their investments and how they go about doing that. And so Evan, and both you guys already alluded to a lot of this. There's the weight between an in-house strategy, FOMO, it's trending, fear of missing out. Nobody wants to miss out today. And AI is one of those hot topics that, if you're not using ChatGPT, if you're not in the game already, how do you get there? How do you get there quickly? And Evan, I think you touched on the very first key piece that we're seeing around this is the readiness of the data, and where that's coming from, the reliability. Yes, there's that legacy compliance piece that is always a consideration when you're talking about specific verticals and organizations, and that data is what's fueling that. So just want to kind of circle us back to say, okay, companies today are thinking about investing in this strategy. Let's walk them through like the 3 key points or a well-informed strategy and what that entails, and kind of reiterate some of those points that you guys have already made. So can we speak to that a bit?
Sure. Tom, you want to give it a go, or?
Yeah, you keep me honest, Evan. I guess, I mean, like, I don't know if I do it in exactly the 3 steps, but like, I think most people know they want to do some experimentation in this space. And I think the key thing that I want to get across is this is not a big bang one and done project. So you know, you want to try things, you want to do it securely, you want to do it safely, but you're not, I don't think, going to go from 0 to let's grab every call of our organization and see what we can find. You want to pick a use case, and then with that use case, you want to think about what data do we need for that use case to work. So can we get the data? What is the data? How much data do we need to have a valid, you know, test case? Middle bullet, defining the objectives. Again, the danger in a hype cycle, and AI is a hype cycle, is we've got budget, we don't even know what we're doing, we just want to play with the data and see what comes of it. That's, I mean, it's good fun if you've got the budget, but it's not great for a business outcome. So think about, like, what are we going to show the business back in value? What are we trying to achieve here? What are the business objectives around the data? And then I would suggest you kind of start off with a particular data set or a particular use case, see what you can do between that data and the different models, and see, you know, are you getting the results you intended?
Yeah, I would agree, and I would just add, you know, that data that we're talking about here could easily be, you know, obviously from our side on the media, but then easily integrated with, you know, other data, you know, stacks within your 365 environments, right? You might want to correlate media data with email data, or you might want to correlate it with something that you have sitting in SharePoint, or something else that you've brought into a Power BI report, right? And so it's really important understanding, like Tom said, where you're getting it from. Is it the right data? And is it going to merge with the other data sets that we get? Because I think that we all could agree that AI is the most powerful when, you know, you've isolated all the data you need. It's typically from more than one place, and you've brought that all together and found a way to connect or integrate or tie those data sets or data points together, and that's where we get the richest information back.
It is the new oil, as they say.
Yeah,
So with that, I think that's a great opportunity for us to segue in some of the use cases and where we're seeing organizations such as large enterprises start to evaluate how they're going to use that data, what is the outcome of that, and where the return on that investment is. So Evan, I would love it if you could add some color to the conversation around, you know, what some of these large organizations we're working with or are doing when we think about, you know, even HR or some of the other functional teams. So with that, I'll kind of let you steer the conversation on what your observations are and in terms of the use cases that we're seeing today.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of great examples off the top of my head. I think I'll split it into 2. I'll split it into companies that are out there building specialized AI software for specific verticals, and then let's say larger enterprise, and I also put government kind of for this conversation in that group as well. So we do see from a large enterprise government standpoint, as we mentioned up top, the ones we speak to, they already have data science teams. They're already started this path, but as Tom alluded to, what does that mean? We started it, we got a little bit of budget, we got a team. Now, what are we going to do? And for example, one government entity that we're working with is tied to their legal proceedings, right? And they have their legal proceedings, especially now using Teams, where people come in from home. The judges could maybe not be in the courtroom, etc. And they wanted to be able to record those sessions, give summaries to the stakeholders within that organization, and give a bit of context to each meeting that happened. And so they had already taken the steps to get that together on the AI side, but they needed a simple way to hook into Teams to record specific and only very specific conferences that were happening. And so that's a use case that we see a lot, where they've done some work, but the missing piece is they took a look at recording. They thought they might be able to use the built-in one, which we know that we can't. The built-in recording that we're using today is not a compliant solution in any means. So they figured that out. Then they looked at the compliance APIs. They looked kind of straightforward, then realized that there's a program attached, the certification, and then that was the end of it for them.
Yeah, looks straightforward. I love that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Looks straightforward. There's
it's
only
an API,
4
right?
API, right? Yeah, exactly. And so that's a typical path that we see with the larger companies and their flow. When it comes to the partners, for me, this gets really exciting because there's just so many guys trying to do amazing things when it comes to AI. The two that come to the top of my mind, one is a HR company that simply is really built for large enterprises who deal with a lot of employee, onboarding, offboarding, hiring, firing, etc. And they have built a software that kind of smooths out that whole process. And what really attracted me to what they've done is they will record an interview that is happening on Teams. So they will see the video of our faces like ours. And they'll be asking questions and getting recordings of the entire conversation. But then what they do is they go and feed that through their model specifically for HR, using sentiment analysis and video indexing and some of their own personal tools. And they're able to go back to the managers and say, yeah, when this guy answered this call, we think that he was 80% chance being untruthful. This kind of stuff. Right. So if you look at a company that's hiring, 1,000 people a month, and they're able to get that level of insight into someone's personality simply by getting the media of that session and feeding it into their engines, both for video processing and for audio processing, and coming out with those kinds of points is extremely powerful. And we see their customers loving that kind of feature, right? Like, wow, you're actually grading the accuracy of this appointment or of this interview in that way. So this is an example of a company that's,
and in a very even way, which is a big thing with recruitment. Is like, well, we've got 12 candidates. This is the same mechanism has judged their kind of their performance, if you like, in the same way. It was one of the big things for HR, and the same thing with the whole job lifecycle thing. You need to have evidence points all the way through the process, all that stuff. So it's a really good use case where it's data intensive and tough to do fairly.
Right, and also it takes a lot of human capital to get it all done, right? If you had to try and do all of this with like our old school quality management, where someone's listening to it, playing it back, and trying to set up these data points, for someone else to look at, that could take you a year to listen to those 1,000 interviews. Whereas, with their tool, well, at the end of the month, you have the report on every one of them, right? And so for me, I found that as that HR use case and the use of AI just super focused in HR was very interesting for me. And then another one that comes to mind, we have a partner, Gong, in the sales AI space. And they've really built a massive business out of focusing only on AI in regards to sales. And that means everything from recording their meetings to tracking their emails, to understanding the tones of customer calling, customer calls, sales calls, and then taking all sales data from every point, whether it be from the ERP, the CRM, the Teams media recordings, all of that, putting it together so that when a sales organization, so again, super focused, when the sales organization of a company onboards this kind of technology to their sales team, it's supercharging the sales team in all kinds of ways that we never even imagined, right? And I think that goes back, that we never even imagined goes back to the top of the presentation, which is we don't even know what's really possible yet. People are coming out with new ideas all the time, and so that's why we're very hesitant to be a one and done, right? Our analytics will suit you, for whatever it is you might do. We might work with you for 3 to 6 months to train it and do this and that, but really, it just from what we see, it's not the way that it works. These guys that are super focused are the ones that are getting business. That's where people are going, and a little bit from our side, they like the fact that they have a back end kind of utility here, that company, if they decide in the future, well, we've got sales covered, we're recording sales calls, but now we have HR and we want to hook them in. Well, they've already got our TRAS implemented, and so they're good to go. They can spin up or onboard AI companies to do different departments for them very easily. And so I think that's another big thing when it comes to, I think there's a lot of migration that happened to cloud the last 3 years, and I think everyone's taking a breather right now and hoping that we're not going to have a jump cycle the next 3 years where it moves again as fast as it did. I think COVID put some people on their heels when it came to deployment schedules, etc.
Definitely. Just going back to the Gong, like I've heard a couple of people that are really impressed with that tool, and something that's interesting there is a lot of the use cases we've talked about are like digging into the data, as in like what are the topics over the calls in the last week, but also there's this whole other side of AI where it could potentially be real time, it could be coaching, it could be tips, it could be feedback, and that's where I'm really excited about the future. I mean, you can definitely see it coming of like having AI sales coaches, we wanted to push this upsell. No, like the person hasn't mentioned it yet. Remember, mention the upsell, that kind of thing. It'll be like your one-to-one real-time coach.
Right, and I will say I have seen a couple demos of that tech, and there are little pieces out there, but I think next year we actually should expect quite a lot of that real-time coaching starting to hit the market, and the technology for getting that going is now almost there, right? I think we just spoke just before this call about people say it's real time, but what does real time mean to audio guys? Well, that means less than 20 milliseconds, right? Which is not what we're getting when people say real time. And so that timing is getting very close to what we would accept as real time, and the results are starting to be really fun and cool as far as, hey, I'm a sales guy on a call, and it's really just helping me out in ways that I could have never imagined. And when you get the sale at the end of a call,
here's what you promised 3 calls ago. Oh yeah, I'd forgotten that.
Oh yeah, bring it up, and that'll help you close the sale. Yeah, those are all just amazing little and just little things that came out of it that are really fun, entertaining, and not what they were designed for. It's just a cool byproduct of everything else that's going into building these systems out. So exciting times, that's for sure.
Guys, really great information that's flowing here. You have to be mindful of the time, and certainly want to allow if there are any questions coming in from the audience. So with that, I think we can kind of dive into the takeaways from today, and this doesn't even begin to summarize a lot of what you've spoken about. So I think I'll let the two of you just kind of wind things down and let any questions from the audience flow in, and we'll certainly share contact information as well for follow-ups if you weren't able to watch live and want to submit any questions or feedback. But I think there's some really great takeaways from this conversation. Pre-captured some of these, some things certainly came out in the conversation. So with that, Evan, I'll like kind of let you dig in, and then Tom, maybe you can put a pretty little bow on it, and I'll hand things over again.
Yeah, I think that definitely, like we said, define exactly what you're trying to do with AI. If you're still going into it with this mindset that it could solve everything all at once, I think that you got to take a step back and reassess what you're trying to do. And again, that's not just a statement from us media capture guys, it's across the board. It doesn't matter where you're going to play in this space. We see that mistake happening, quite a lot. And it does set timelines back quite drastically. With vendor selection, the simple thing for me is really look at guys, especially when you're looking at analytics providers, AI providers. Be very wary of the one and dones. Find the guys who have spent their R&D on focusing on solving a specific problem. These are the guys that we see are making the biggest headway within the industry, and very horizontally, right? It's they focus on a vertical, and that statement is true. You focus on a vertical; those are the guys that you really want to get to. One caveat I'd put up there is for all the small businesses out there, and I know that term means something different to us in America as opposed to some partners in different parts of the world, but when you're if you're a small business, then by no means do you have to rip apart your company and do this. There are kind of first tier solutions for basic analytics and sentiment analysis that you can find out there. So if you're really just 5-10 people and and you have a use case for just basic transcription and sentiment, you have options out there. So I don't want to kind of just ignore that whole segment of the market. You have more options. This is really catered more to the, I'd say, mid-tier enterprise government and then, integration development partners. So I thought I'd put that out there. User adoption and feedback. I think I'll let Tom speak to this one better. You deal with the adoption a lot more. But before we get to that one, obviously we play in security and compliance. With us, it's the first place that we start, which is how do we securely and compliantly get the data. If you can't solve that in a compliance environment or in a company that's regulated, well, then this project wouldn't even get off the ground. So super important to get that in place. And then lastly, from my side, the data quality. For us, what that means from a audio video standpoint is having the engine that is doing the capturing be able to be versatile in things like how does it output audio, what output formats do you support? Do you support stereo? How do you support stereo? Can you output in uncompressed PCM for the audio nerds on the bridge, all the way to compressed GSM? The quality matters, and you need to have engines that can really spit out the cleanest quality audio and video that's possible, because we've seen some cases where the quality coming into some systems that we're taking over is really bad, and then that throws off everything from the first step, right? Your transcription scores get poorer, your sentiment scores get poorer, and so the quality, not just capturing that data, but make sure that it's output to the engines in the most uncompressed, best format possible is something that's really, really important when it comes to AI across the board.
Awesome. Yeah, I think you did a good job there, Evan. So I guess on the user adoption and feedback, like that comes back to the define clear objectives, which is clearly the first one because it's very important. So who is the audience of the solution? Is it the Gong example? Is it we're trying to coach the sales team, or is it more like it's contact center manager, back office, like sales insights? It's the sales manager, or it's the CMO that's our customer there. So make sure all through this project, like expect to experiment. And I think when you're doing AI projects at the moment, define them with the business as, we're experimenting. We know this is going to be impactful. We don't, we might have to do 3 different things here to find out where the value is. But yeah, take those users, as in your customers, on the journey with you and say, this is what we're trying to do, this is what we're trying to achieve. We're trying A, B, and C, and see where you go. But you've got to be in this space. Like, it's going to be too impactful to not be paying attention to it, I think.
Yeah, 100%. It will touch on, I think, everything that we do, right? Like we spoke about, Microsoft's got the personal assistants covered. We're going to get help from everywhere, always. And now it's about helping the organizations themselves, right? How do you I've heard some VCs throw around the terms of, personal assistants for the board, personal assistants for, the C-suite, this kind of stuff. So they're starting to think about it growing out from personal to groups and things like that as we go. But like you said, and I 100% agree, it's even though there's so much hype, it's early days. It's early days.
Well, thank you both. So with that, just a bit about Numonix. We're an interaction capture company, innovating a solution for capturing your recordings, your team's interactions, everything from screen to voice to video. And we have solutions that are designed to obviously help customers and organizations enhance those experiences with an eye on compliance. And so we're here to help across various verticals and industries with some of the specific questions might have arose from today's question. And then certainly want to plug and thank once again Tom and EmpoweringCloud for supporting this conversation. It's a wonderful resource for all things Microsoft Teams, advice, training, just the resources go on. And Tom, if you want to say anything in addition to that, I just can't say enough positive things about everything that you guys are doing for the Microsoft community and getting out there and just helping educate and provide that level of support.
Yeah, no, that's great. I really appreciate that, Tina, and I appreciate Numonix support with everything we do there. We're up to 3,500 people in that community now, so we have 28 subject matter experts all providing content. So, yeah, our goal is to provide the best, most up-to-date content around Teams in the Microsoft ecosystem. So, if that's your thing, then by all means, check it out.
Okay, and just on a final note, ways to reach out to us. I know we're nearing time, so we'll address any questions that come in and share a recording of this. But do feel free to reach out to us through our websites, both email addresses here. Evan, Tom, I know they're both very engaged in community. Happy to answer those questions, and just thank everyone for their time and attention today. And as you view this recording in the future, be on the lookout for future content. We have upcoming podcasts that we're working through that will be a follow-up to some of this conversation with special guests that we're working on securing. So really excited to share those details, and just want to thank everyone for their time and attention today. We'll leave you with that.
Well, thanks everybody for the time.
Thank you, and thanks, Tom. Good to see you again as always.
Yeah, no, always good conversation. Thanks very much. Thanks everybody.
Thanks, Art. Thanks everyone. Take care.